It's 6:01. All right. John, are we good? Good evening. Thank you for joining the Binghamton City Council business meeting, 6th December, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rossetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley. Councilmember Friedman.
Present.
Councilman Burns is absent. Councilman Strawn.
Present.
Councilman Scanlon.
Present.
And President Scringy.
Present.
That's 5 here, 2 absent, Rossetti and Burns.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Friedman for the purposes of a motion regarding approval of minutes, please. When you're in. I didn't alert you. That was my
No.
fault. I just wanted to give that.
I asked for a motion to accept the minutes from the,
15 November.
from the November 15th business meeting.
Thank you. Motion by Councilwoman Friedman, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. At this point, we will move forward with setting a public hearing. Chair recognizes Madam Clerk.
The city of Binghamton will hold a public hearing regarding RL 23-264 in compliance with the New York State Housing and Community Renewal Grant requirements to receive comments on the city of Binghamton's current community development block grant project for the Binghamton Housing Authority North Shore Tower Elevator Rehab. This public hearing will take place at the December 20th, 2023 business meeting at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time, we will move forward with public comment. Residents wishing to submit public comment may do so electronically by emailing their comments prior to 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting to clerk@cityofbinghamton.gov or in person during the meeting at this time. Madam Clerk, was there any snail mail or electronic submissions received?
No, there was not.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anyone who would like to speak during public comment may do so at this time. You will have 5 minutes uninterrupted. Please state your name and whether you live and or work in the city of Binghamton. Evening, sir. How are you?
Hey, good evening.
Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Kenneth Brown. I live in the city of Binghamton. Good evening, everyone. As you all already know, my name is Kenneth Brown. I'm a resident of the city of Binghamton. After the final results of last week's hand count, I was going to come here tonight in celebratory fashion and pageantry, wanting to rub it in that you all lost. But the news of the many expensive proposals for Monday's work session made me realize that the time for real celebration won't actually be until January 1st when you're all officially out of office. So now I've come here today to remind you all of something very important. On Election Day in November, the voters spoke pretty clearly about how they feel about the makeup of this current city council. All current sitting Republicans have been voted out, and all Republican candidates supported by the Cram administration lost their respective races, and not by a small margin. On November 7th, the voters of Binghamton handed Jared Cram and the Binghamton Republican Party a very sharp and clear rebuke of them and their policies. Not only did you all lose the Republican majority, but you all lost every single seat on city council. And Sophie Bergman, loudly and proudly supported and endorsed by Cram and the Binghamton GOP machine, also lost. The message was clear. The voters are fed up with a lack of transparency. The voters are fed up with the reckless spending away of our city's future for seeming pet projects and earmarks. The voters are sick and tired of being ignored. Many, many times over the last few years, you have all had to sit here and listen to constituents from all walks of life come in front of this legislative body and beg and plead with you to not pass a David or Cram proposal. They have yelled and screamed for some kind of reason from you. They have all asked for you to recognize the will of the voter over the wishes of City Hall and the David and Cram administrations. And every single one of the Republicans here has completely disregarded the wishes of the voters and taxpayers time and time again. Just one of the many examples is when this last summer, you all listened to a multitude of your constituents beg you to reconsider the now defunct 28-year pilot agreement for the Water Street parking garage. And you ignored them, and you passed it anyways. Because as you had done many times in the past, you made it obvious that although you were elected to represent the taxpayers, you didn't care about that obligation at all, and instead were here to be a blatant rubber stamp for Cram, like you were for David. And you were warned time and time again that these kind of tactics would backfire for you come election day. I myself echoed that exact warning back in early October, but you clearly did not care. Because you seem to forget that you're not appointed by the mayor, but by the voters and taxpayers of Binghamton. And clearly the voters are not as stupid, apathetic, or forgetful as you seem to think and hope they were. The results from November 7th should have been a major wake-up call for you and Mayor Cram. Any reasonably minded person would see that the voters were not kidding when we said we were fed up, and that there would be electoral repercussions for your actions. But here we are, barely a month after election night, and Cram is at it again, hoping you will all continue the same nonsense of rubber stamping, disregarding the will of the voters and the reckless spending that got every single one of you a well-deserved pink slip. But the thing is, you all now really have nothing to lose. You don't have to answer to Cram or David by default anymore. You don't have to be rubber stamps. You can finally stand up for what is right and show the voters that you heard them loud and clear. Because your soon-to-be former colleague, Jared Cram, clearly did not. And the voters will remember that come November 4th, 2025, if the Binghamton GOP foolishly, in the face of all political strategy and reason, moves forward with Cram as the Republican mayoral candidate. But I digress. These next 2 weeks are your chance to make some small amends for the many wrongs you have all committed during your respective city council tenures. These are your final chances to show the voters that you can learn from your mistakes. These are your final chances to finally do the jobs you were elected to do and work for the voters and the taxpayers. Because the vast majority of voters and taxpayers made it clear that they do not trust you with their money and do not want you making decisions with it any longer.
You have 1 minute.
So please, for once, have a backbone and stand up to the Cram administration and stand up for the voters in your final weeks on city council. Because if you do not, and any of you seek public office again, I promise we the voters will not forget you continuing the same wrongful actions that got you removed from office in the first place. In the face of all terrible expectations, please prove us wrong and do your jobs correctly. I'll be back again in 2 weeks, hopefully with a few more people to reiterate this very important point. Because it seems that you all constantly need to be reminded at every single turn that even though you are on your way out, you still work for us and not City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Or anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. Evening, sir. How are you?
I don't know. If you want a photo of me, I don't know why you would.
You have 5 minutes, sir. The floor is, all right,
yeah.
please. Mr.
Um,
Solak, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
John Solak, Binghamton, New York. I was at the Vestal Town Board meeting, 5 o'clock today. You'll see it at Binghamton Daily on my X page. You'll see John Schaefer, a registered member of the Democrat Party, saying I have no rights and I should go back to Binghamton. So there you go. And here I am, less than an hour later, right down the Parkway. Isn't that something? You know, the councils have been lackluster. I gotta, you know, they haven't really proposed any legislation on their own. It's a thing now. Jack Sheehan, when he came in with his proposal to cut council to 5, wear the T-shirt, and finally cut council to 7. And people say, well, how would we do it with 5? Well, you go to at-large representation. See, this is what has smarted you all out. You know, everybody else except the county and the city has at-large representation. Every one of them. School districts, municipalities, town of Union, all at large. You can stagger the seats. And that's what, you know, you thought this thing was, again, quoting Jack Sheehan, you think this is Los Angeles, talking about my district and this district. But the real thing is you get quality people. I mean, somebody's to get elected to the Binghamton School Board, somebody's got to pull over 1,000 votes, you know, depending on the year. The year I ran, it was not good enough. Then the next election, it almost was. Now, I've gone over the city's legal bills. I've never seen them so high for outside legal counsel. I've never seen so many attorneys. I know the big Syracuse law firms, the big Rochester, I know them. And then I saw others in there. So apparently buy local doesn't apply to the legal thing, you know, I mean, but I've never seen so many of them. Even with urban renewal, with all the condemnation, there was never this many. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe we're shaking the trees for campaign contribution. But, you know, I made this statement 20 years ago. If the Republicans embrace all the Democrat schemes, nonprofits, transfer payments, someday the Democrats will come in and run it for them. And that's exactly what happened. There was no distinction without a difference. You know, a guy was speaking at Scranton City Council, and by the way, they meet every week, and they've got a good video feed. But a guy said he blamed the voters. He went and said, "I blame the voters." He says there can't possibly be that many retired school teachers and retired police to keep putting forth the same inept candidates election after election. And that's what we have here. Police made a gigantic mistake in this town getting involved in the politics. They really did. There was nothing for them to gain and everything to lose, and they lost. They lost. They should have been working the Spencer case. Now let's talk about litigation. You know how much the Quellers are going to get? You know how much damages they got? I mean, look at the Cal Harris case. You know, actual damages. I'm not talking about anything made up. This guy knows damages when he sees it. I mean, the Quellers got an enormous amount of damages should they proceed against this city. And what was the deal? Well, it was a sloppy investigation, just like the Cal Harris case was. You know, I mean, you know, this is it. Whether or not, it doesn't matter what way you think. You know, they're going to sue the city, and they're going to get a telephone number judgment against this city. It has nothing to do with what occurred. It has everything to do with what occurred with the investigation. So I like I say, the police need to get out of politics one way or the other. You know, and that's it. Now, what's going to happen here is they'll pick them off. The new council, they'll pick them off one by one. That's what they'll do. And then they'll say, well, you can't do this. You can't do that. Now we go back to the last time the Democrats were in charge here. Mr. Seacrest may remember it. I don't think he was at the dais, but he may remember this. When the issue became, who does the corporation council represent? Does he represent the administration or does he represent the council? Council, Tony Massar, the late Tony Massar, introduced resolution that would have had council have their own attorney. So we better straighten that one out in a hurry. But at-large representation was the way to go in this city all along. It's too small. And, you know, that idea has been on the table for a long time by yours truly. And, you know, don't listen to John. Don't listen to John. Keep giving the snake charmer 30 grand to run for city judge because he can get you the nomination and see what happens. Next time, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one real Republican in this town, and that's me. So I'll take that guy on. I'll take that baby boy on. I'll take that 30-year-old low energy guy on any day of the week. I'm coming for you, Jared. I'm coming.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
I keep making the mistake of going after
Evening.
him.
Thank you for joining us. Floor is yours.
Hi, Tark Abdelzim. I live in the city of Binghamton. Lot of proposals that are coming before this council in the annual tradition of let's plunder everything in December. I just want to go back to the BMET Stadium negotiation. I mean, there was just an incredible amount of lack of transparency about what was being asked. I know at least 3 of these council members, and which has been typical of the last 4 years, were not aware of the actual terms of the agreement that kept being referenced. Now, maybe the 4 of you Republicans were given copies and they were just excluded as typical, or maybe all 7 of you didn't know. But when I foiled that and shared that with everyone, that was like new information. It was why I was saying this number of asking for 7.5 million is ridiculous, because the agreement puts us on the hook of only 3.1 million for facility standard improvements. And then there was another term in that agreement, very poorly worded, in regards to fixing repairs caused by flood damage. Okay, who has the scope of work and the details that can justify the $1 million investment that we're making? Nobody had it. You asked one question when David was here, the president, and you said, am I understanding that there was at least one game that was postponed or delayed because of the flood damages? He explained yes, and you were like, okay, thank you. That was the only question you asked, Gio. Now, either you were privy to private conversations that you did not include your council members and colleagues in, or you didn't do your due diligence, and just because the Jared said this is what we're doing, and a white professional guy came before you with wealth and said this is what I need, and you just said okay. So you're now asking these council members to ram through massive agreements and expenditures of ARPA funds when there's clearly no detail, no transparency, no agreements. I mean, you're now going to grant Jared the authority to enter into an agreement for both the town and country when the loan doesn't even close until July? That's absurd. I think that the responsible thing would be to allow the next incoming city council to negotiate that agreement, because the power dynamics have changed dramatically. Power not for the sake of power, but power to ensure that the work of governance reflects the values of transparency, accountability, that any agreements or deliberations reflect community interests and needs that are going unmet, that are responsible to the taxpayers, because this body under GOP leadership has failed miserably in that endeavor. And so I think it would be appropriate to pass that along to the next city council, recognizing, as the prior speaker said, that the voters spoke very clearly as a rebuke to the David Cram regime, leadership, governance style, and priority setting. So I hope that this body uses its authority. By the way, did someone tell Sophia when she lost that she still had 2 months of work? Like, was she confused by that? She hasn't showed up, and you know, as you all know, that just makes 3 rubber stampers, and it's not a majority. So there is finally a great deal of agency that the 3 Democrats can exercise, and I have watched 4 years of you all being denied that agency, you all being diminished. When a lot of us came to you, your exclusion meant our exclusion. So I hope that you show integrity and courage. I know you have integrity, and I hope you show the courage to do what is necessary to reflect the voters' wishes and move some very serious decisions to the next body. Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? The chair seeing none, we will move forward with second read legislation. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-149.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-149. An ordinance to amend the charter of the city of Binghamton, chapter 327, use of right of way.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Friedman. Discussion. Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, President Scaringi. I just wanted to say, as I was the council member that made the motion to hold this over, I initially was, I guess skeptical is an appropriate word, due to the fact that it seemed to be that when this RL was initially presented, there was a lot of focus on changing the language from the city clerk to the Director of Economic Development, or the Economic Development, or the Department of Economic Development. And we kind of glossed over the non-contiguous municipal space aspect of it. So, you know, my ears are pointed up, and I said, wait a minute, why are we skipping over this? And it made me a little nervous. So I held it over. And I will say that Dr. Burling responded to me. I think she was the one who initially presented or proposed the legislation. And she did sufficiently answer my question. So just, to put onto the record that the explanation that she gave to me is that there are businesses right now who are kind of utilizing this non-contiguous municipal public space to have their outdoor cafe, the outdoor seating area. And basically it just means that there is allowed to be a sidewalk, let's say, that separates the outdoor seating area from the facade of the restaurant. So I just wanted to explain why I held it over and then explain that how my questions were sufficiently answered. So I do support this legislation and thank you for allowing me to exercise due process in being an educated voter on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns, Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resaletti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory ordinance 23-141 passes. We will now move forward with the preferred agenda portions of first read legislation. Colleagues, are there any requests for legislation that anyone would like removed from the preferred agenda? Seeing none, we will move forward. Madam Clerk.
Introductory ordinance 23-150, considered in finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 Department of Public Works budget for additional overtime costs.
Council discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-151, considered in finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 water fund budget for additional chemical expenses due to increased costs.
Council discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-152, considered in planning, an ordinance to void resolution 23-27 due to changes in match percentage.
Council discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-153, considered in finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 budget for the demolition of fire damaged property located at 32 Second Street.
Discussion. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. This is just, I guess, a logistical question, I suppose, but it seems that I'm following along in the packet, not just on the title page, and the titles of the legislation don't exactly match on the first reading legislation page and on the actual legislation. I don't know if that's an actual issue, but I just wanted to point that out in case it is an issue.
For 153,
So
correct.
for example,
Go ahead.
151 is slightly different. It, on the actual legislation, it says, and additional overtime expenses at the end, and also 152 also is slightly different as well.
Are they technically different or substantively different?
I think so. 152 seems to be, well, yeah, I think substantively they are, I would say, the same. The title in this first reading legislation, it matches the substance of the legislation, but the title is significantly different. Yeah, again, I'm not sure if that's an issue, but I wanted to point it out in case
No,
it
it's-
is an
I
issue.
was seeing that as you were 151 and 153.
And 152.
Two. All right, here's what I'm gonna do. in my capacity as first district representative, I'm going to pull 151, 152, and 153 from the preferred agenda. We are going to have to take each of those in concession, and we're going to have to make Corp Counsel, does that fall categorically as clerical that can be changed? Or my concern is the differentiation in substance. Because technically speaking, with that differentiation, we should probably make
It
amendments.
appears that what's on the agenda is a summary of what actually is. The other option would be to actually go to the legislature and read the titles from that for the preferred agenda for those. If you don't want to pull them from the.
Is that substantively enough?
Well, all you
You're
would
right.
normally do is read the actual titles from the document. You're going back, what is there? But there should be the agenda should be corrected in the public. That's correct.
And that could be a clerical error, correcting the agenda.
I think correcting agenda should be, yes,
Okay.
but it needs to be read properly.
Into the record.
Yes.
All right, let's, Madam Clerk, if you could, but please, could you reread, 151 through 153? And then,
I
if,
think we stopped before 193. It may be best at this point just to read off of the actual ordinance. But for the fact. If you'd like that one, reading. There we go.
go ahead, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman.
Introductory ordinance 23-151 concerning finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 water fund budget for additional chemical expenses due to increased costs and additional overtime expense.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-152 considering planning, an ordinance to void permanent resolution 23-27 regarding the acceptance of a New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Environmental Protection Fund Recreational Trails Grant.
Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-153 considering finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 budget for demolition of a fire damaged property at 32 2nd Street.
Council discussion. Madam Clerk.
Last one is introductory resolution 23-93 considered planning. A resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation, Environmental Protection Fund grant.
Council discussion. Councilwoman Rowland.
Thank you, Council President. Unfortunately, again, just through the reading of the title of the ordinance, it brings back to remembrance the discussion we had during the work session about the water fund budget and seeking the increases. Because if you read it as it's written, it says in additional chemical expenses, that's the ask, due to increased costs and additional overtime expense. So it's saying, the way it reads, we're only requesting additional chemical expenses due to costs and additional overtime expenses.
Right.
And actually, we are asking for two separate things, which is what we brought up during the work session and said it was going to be amended by the time, the work session, it was going to be amended and clarified so that we know we are seeking two increases, I'm sorry, in both overtime and in chemical costs due to cost overall. So those are two, that's why we have the two different increases. So it's just grammatical error also. Right. Due to increased cost and overtime expense, which is no, but it's after due to increased cost and additional. So it's explaining, because it's still after the due to. And
additional overtime expense.
so we're increasing the expenses in the chemical line because of overtime
Because of,
costs?
no, We're increasing the expenses in chemicals due to increased cost. We're increasing overtime due to additional.
which is a
overtime expense.
separate thing. Do you
That's
get what I'm-
correct. No, and when you go down to the bottom of the text, that's.
No,
what
we
have.
see it. We see it down at the bottom, but the way it reads, it says due to this and this. So that's kind of, it tied in, it brought back that discussion during the work session.
No, I can understand that. I
Okay.
can understand that. It's clearer on the bottom, but I
Right.
understand where you're coming from, Councilwoman Riley. I appreciate that. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. I wonder if this could be clarified with a clerical error and just adding maybe a comma after cost. So it reads, it's like two clauses. Additional chemical expenses due to increased costs, comma, and additional overtime expense. Does that make sense? So that way it's just clerical and it doesn't have to. It feels like an Oxford comma kind of situation, you know, where it's two clauses, but it reads as one.
I think that would be fine. I think that'd be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it does.
Just clarify it. So it
I
doesn't look like we're
yeah, I
hiding
have no
something.
problem with that. Madam Clerk, would you be okay at some point inserting that comma at the request of Councilwoman Freeman? Please? Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think the key though is that there's two uses of the word additional. And it's additional chemical expenses and additional overtime expense. Right. That's sort of the key to it. I understand your point though, and why it doesn't, but I also understand why they drafted.
We
it the way
do,
They did,
But
but
remember, we're doing this on behalf of people that don't deal with this every
people 10
day.
years from now. who
And we
read it-
need to be
Exactly.
clear in what we're asking for, which is why we talked about it during the work
Nope,
session.
I get it. Thank you.
And which is why we typically ask for separate pieces of
that.
legislation regarding changes to budget lines. So that's that.
Thank you. Okay, did we get the? Yeah, all right. Chair recognizes will recognize a motion to accept the preferred agenda as submitted. No,
As revised.
As revised, okay.
as amended. Will anybody make the motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilwoman Freeman, seconded by Councilman Burns. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilmember Friedman, or I'm sorry, Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resonetti.
All right, really quickly to codify the point that Councilwoman Friedman brought up. We can amend the agenda as is without introducing new legislation. So the chair will entertain a motion to update the titles of introductory ordinances 23-151, 152, and 153 on the agenda to reflect what they are on the actual requests for legislation. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to update the agenda to reflect the titles of RLs
23 dash.
23-151, 23-152, and 23-153
Do I have a second?
as amended.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Friedman, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, can I also ask, I believe that the actual legislation with the correct captions or correct titles was also published with the packet. On the
It
website,
was,
so that The
yes.
public had access to those before.
Correct, yes,
Thank you.
yeah. There was no inhibition on public consumption, but I do agree with Councilwoman Friedman and Riley. I think that that should be reflected correctly. Thank you. I appreciate that. At this point, we will move on to the non-preferred agenda. We have 3 introductory ordinances. Please keep in mind, this is the sale of property for all 6. For all 3 of them, we do need a vote of 6 in the affirmative in order for them to pass. At this time, concerning introductory ordinance 23-154, Chair recognizes Councilman Strawn for the purpose of a seeker.
Mr. President, I got this.
Or Councilman Scanlon, my apologies.
Introductory ordinance, my fault there. Introductory ordinance 23-154, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 24 Stuyvesant Street to Mark A. Mazzell, doing business as Matter Realty LLC for $250.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Scanlon.
The following seeker motions are in reference to the legislation before us. Introductory ordinance 23-121, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 24 Stuyvesant Street to Mark A. Mazzell, doing business as Matter Realty LLC for $250. I make the motion to declare city council as lead agency under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
Make a motion to identify the proposed action as unlisted under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. The proposed sale will not conflict with the adopted land use or zoning regulations. The proposed sale will not impact the character or quality of the existing community. The proposed sale will not have an impact on a critical environmental area. The proposed sale will not impact traffic and infrastructure, energy use, or water and sewer infrastructure. The proposed sale will not negatively impact important historical resources. The proposed sale will not result in an adverse impact or natural resources, erosion and flooding, or human health. The keeping of the subject property will green space will be benefited with this flood prone area.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon.
Aye.
And President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resaletti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeker moves forward. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion.
Introductory ordinance 23-154, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 24 Stuyvesant Street to Mark A. Mazzell, doing business as Matter Realty LLC for $250.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Colleagues, discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti is absent. Councilmember Friedman. Sorry, Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon.
Aye.
And President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resaletti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory ordinance 23-154 with 6 votes in the affirmative passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a seeker concerning introductory ordinance 23-155.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-155, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 56 Holland Street to Karina Monroy Martinez for $350.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Scanlon, seeker, please.
The following seeker motions are in reference to legislation before us. Introductory ordinance 23-121. An ordinance authorizing the sale of 56 Holland Street to Karina Monroy Martinez for $350.
Do I have a second? After he reads the motion.
Second.
I make a motion to declare city council as lead agency under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
My apologies. Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to identify the proposed action as unlisted under seeker.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. The proposed sale will not conflict with the adopted land use plan or zoning regulations. The proposed sale will not impact the character or quality of the existing community. The proposed sale will not have an impact on a critical environmental area. The proposed sale will not impact traffic or infrastructure, energy use, or water or sewer infrastructure. The proposed sale will not negatively impact important historical resources. The proposed sale will not result in an adverse impact for natural resources, erosion and flooding, or human health. The keeping of the subject property as green space will be beneficial to this floodplain area.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resnetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resnetti.
With 6, thank you very much. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-155.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-156. An ordinance authorizing the sale of 22 Charles Street to the Binghamton Local Development Corporation for $1.
Still got to do the other one.
Oh, I
This
didn't-
is,
I never
this
did
is
that.
a motion for
I take it back.
155.
Yeah, my apologies.
No worries.
Introductory ordinance 153-155, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 56 Holland Street to Karina Monroy Martinez for $350.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Council discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President?
Questions been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resnetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resnetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 6 votes in the affirmative, introductory ordinance 23-155 passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a seeker regarding introductory ordinance 23-156.
Introductory ordinance 23-156, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 22 Charles Street to the Binghamton Local Development Corporation for $1.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Councilman Scanlon, seeker, please.
The following seeker motions are in reference to the legislation before us. Introductory ordinance 23-122, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 22 Charles Street to the Binghamton Local Development Corporation for $1.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All's in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
They have their own meeting going.
Councilman Burns, would you like to sit on this side, sir? Yep. Can we respectfully not caucus in the middle of a roll call, please? Thank you very much. I am not the boss of you, but phones are available for text messaging. No, thank you very much. Whoa. All's in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to declare city council as lead agency under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All's in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to identify the proposed action as unlisted under seeker.
Second.
All's in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. The proposed sale will not conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations. The proposed sale will not impact the character or quality of the existing community. The proposed sale will not have an impact on a critical environmental area. The proposed sale will not impact traffic or infrastructure, energy use, or water and sewer infrastructure. The proposed sale will not negatively impact important historic resources. The proposed sale will not result in adverse impact to natural resources, erosion and flooding, or human health.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resnetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resnetti.
Seeker moves forward. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-156.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-156, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 22 Charles Street to the Binghamton Local Development Corporation for $1.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Council discussion. Seeing none, is the question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resaletti.
With 6 ayes in the, thank you, Madam Clerk. With 6 votes in the affirmative, introductory ordinance 23-156 passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-166.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-166. An ordinance to amend the 2023 Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Plant Budget for personnel services hourly CPI increase.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. Council discussion. For our viewership at home, CPI stands for Consumer Price Index. Since there's no other discussion, has the question been called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resaletti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory ordinance 23-166 passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-94.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory resolution 23-94. Resolution to authorize the mayor to enter a municipal agreement for confined space emergency rescue for Frito-Lay Incorporated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resaletti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 absent. Resaletti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory resolution 23-94 passes. At this point, we will move on communications from councilmen. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Briefly, I'd like to congratulate the city council winners. Some people think I'm not being sincere, but I am. It's a change that we'll see. We'll see. I mean, there's a learning curve involved. Obviously, everybody's brand new. There's still one that's undecided, I guess, but everybody else is brand new. So it'll take time to get your footing, but I wish you all luck. I guess that's all I'll say about it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. First and foremost, I want to say happy holidays to all. As we know, tomorrow is not promised, so we have to live each day excited about what's to come. And we respect all holidays that will be celebrated in the month of December. I want to also give kudos to the participants that were in my World AIDS Day event that was held via Zoom in conjunction with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We had some wonderful speakers, Ms. Mumsy Wilberforce from UMES School of Pharmacy, Deanna Walsh, who is a BSN from the Broome County Health Department and runs the STI clinic where they do HIV and HCV testing. Dr. Jay Walsh, who is an Afro-Latin queer sexuality and diversity scholar who brought a lot of great information, as well as Scott Rossman, who is the clinical director of the HIV program at UHS in Binghamton. As you all know, we see disproportionately increasing rates of HIV cases in Black and Brown communities. So it was important on this 35th anniversary of World AIDS Day to bring people together to talk about the challenges and encourage testing and awareness and PrEP, which is a medication that can be used to prevent the transmission of HIV. So again, kudos to all of the partners in the city that shared their resources and tips. So if you have questions, you can reach out to both the Broome County Health Department and UHS. We do have other agencies that were unable to attend, but again, if you feel they have a warm and welcoming environment for questions and concern, you can always reach out to me for the next 30-something days as well. Also, as, 25. So as we talk about these last 25 days, we have as lame ducks around the table, I want to first and foremost thank the team at the City of Binghamton, the employees who worked with us to really help us get some things through, learn the process, and really saw help. Well, they were part of the process in seeing us mature in our respective roles. And we built some strong alliances with many department heads to ensure that we met the needs of the residents. So shout out to them. I also want to just give kudos again to my council colleagues around the table. No, we don't agree. We don't have to, but at the end of the day, we did have periods where we did align fundamentally, whether it was regarding our children's successes or our health concerns, or just because we have humanistic characteristics. And so you guys have become a part of my life on Monday, Wednesday, twice a month at least, and it's going to be different. It's going to be different. So I want to thank you guys for that. I don't want to say camaraderie. I don't know what I want to say about this group, but yeah. But I thank you for the time. I want to send kudos to those who are moving on to places bigger and brighter than what they have done for so long. I believe these opportunities are launching spaces for us to do more and see more, right? So we had a tough period being the minority group on this council. And in that, I just want to say I am thankful for the change in the voters that came out to change the dynamic, as Councilman Scanlon alluded to earlier. I am excited to see a day when we do not see press releases and promises of millions of dollars to entities without the legislation even being brought to the council for review, where we hear people saying, oh, well, I already got the word from such and such. This money is not anyone's personal slush fund. However, it has been, and we have been a part of years of promises that because we didn't have the majority to oppose, we had to sit idly by. And I think those days are limited. I look forward to it. I also want to say, thank you again. I talked about the people in City Hall, the department chairs, but our clerks who are here and the clerks that have left. Again, we may not be on the same party lines, but when it came down to a crunch and things were needed for our citizens, like the resolutions and proclamations that councilmen do across the city that our constituents look forward to. It may be nothing to you, but to have a proclamation read at your child's graduation, at your family's member's funeral, those matter. And although Tarek said we didn't have a lot of legislation go through, I would like you to count my proclamations because I think I was able to successfully get those through, and hopefully another one in support of, well, not a proclamation, but legislation in support of Senator Webb's legislation that's in front of the governor. And finally, I wish you all well. Again, this has been a time I can't describe, but I hope that my constituents will continue to support the growth and the change that we see in this city and continue to support the councilmen as they go forward doing what they've been elected to do. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scaringi. Yeah. I guess I first wanted to extend a thank you to you, President Scaringi, for Monday's work session. I do admire your commitment to the logistical procedures and the fact that we did not have a quorum due to whatever circumstances may be. And I want to say I do appreciate that. So I wanted to say that on the record. It's been 3 weeks since our last business meeting, so there have been a few events that I was fortunate enough to attend in the city that I wanted to shout out. One of them, this is, I think in chronological order, but one of them was the holiday tree lighting. There was some excellent live music, and despite the colds, there was an audience to listen to the musicians, and then Councilman-elect Nate Hotchkiss was there with me when they actually lit the tree, so that was nice. It felt a little bit like a passing of the torch, even though technically I'm not even in that district anymore. But there was also a lovely event, Music and Movement, at the Lee Barta Community Center. That was fun. That was with Miss Rebecca. And then on Friday, there was I was able to attend the Middle Eastern and North African Culture Night at the American Civic Association. And they have different culture nights periodically, and they're always a blast, and the food is always delicious. And music too, live music, just really amazing. And today I came straight from the Food Bank of the Southern Tiers repack event. So there was kind of this assembly line, and we were packing up bags of food to be distributed in Elmira, actually. So that was nice. There were a whole bunch of elected officials and important people there as well. There is not so much coming up, but there is, at least in the 4th district, the Northside Neighborhood Assembly meeting is tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Centenary Shenango Street United Methodist Church. It's going to be my last Northside Neighborhood Assembly, and I do want to give a shout out to Janet McHenry, who chairs those meetings. I think neighborhood assembly meetings are an excellent forum in which to work together and meet people in the community and come together, government officials, business owners, neighborhood people. I mean, it's nice. It's a way to meet people that, when you don't have time to go door to door, it's nice that they, your neighbors kind of come congregate in one spot. Yeah, I know this is our penultimate meeting, but everyone keeps making these statements like it's our last one. But yeah, it's been a time. This is true, an unforgettable time. It was empowering and rewarding, and also extremely frustrating, demoralizing, like a whole range of emotions. And the department heads and a lot of my colleagues as well, I will say that even despite ideological differences, most people were very responsive to emails and phone calls, and thorough as well. Responding to emails in a timely fashion isn't the strongest skill I bring to the table. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's immediate, and sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 business days. So it is what it is. But the department heads and the employees at City Hall were responsive and thorough. And I wanted to shout out, like Councilwoman Riley said, everyone who made this job possible. It is hard, and I don't think I've ever said this on the record, but I have said this off the record, that one of the hills that I'm willing to die on is that city council really could be a full-time job. And sometimes it's hard trying to do the best that you can, knowing that, it's hard to fit what easily could be 40 hours of work a week into, 15 to 20 hours. So I don't know, maybe something to consider for the future, but whatever. So thank you to also my constituents who believed in me. I hope that I did right by you. I really tried to. And I will truly never, ever, ever forget this. So all of you are in my memory forever. That is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman. Appreciate you. Chair recognizes Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't prepare a goodbye speech, so I'll save mine for the 20th.
That's
what I'm
last
gonna
day.
But I'd like to just remind folks that you know, the over at it's not my district. I guess I think John from Binghamton there about the at-large. I like the idea of what he had there about that at-large representation, in that there are districts that need more help than others, you know, and there's districts that need so much help that the person that represents that district say, well, gee, I haven't done enough for my district, but you know, the money's got to be spread around, you know, whereas if we were all concentrating on the city as a whole, I just have a feeling that the people that need help would get the help, possibly. Anyway, the Recreation Park is having their carousel, the winter carousel, and Santa is there, and I take my grandkids each year that we've had it, and it is a lot of fun. And they have a horse-drawn carriage, and they have a carriage ride, and they had the first one on the second. And as a council person, I didn't know about it, so I think they should advertise it. You know, I will be there either. It's December 9th, and it's at night. Starts at dark, a little before dark, and December 16th. So take the kids over there. Anyone's out there listening, and you'll have a really good time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Burns. Chair recognizes Councilman Strong.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Councilman Burns says, I'll probably save some remarks for the 20th. I wasn't really prepared for any of that, but I will say that in the races, especially in the 6th and 7th district, if people think that their vote doesn't matter, their vote matters. All votes matter. Don't take me wrong, but in these races, they really do matter. So I do appreciate the people that came out. I will say that countywide, if you look at the numbers, even in this kind of an off-year rate, it was less than 28%. And quite honestly, that's discouraged. Not discouraged. It's disappointing. And that has no matter who you were to vote for or whatever. But I really believe that, and after seeing the counting process and the recount process, I think the state of New York, Broome County generally does a pretty good job. I think the 9 days are well done because you go in person and it doesn't take not less than 5 minutes to vote. 14 hours on election day. I think that there's ample opportunity. So I would just encourage people. I don't know if anybody's even out there listening, but thank the people that vote, respect the voters, and there just should be more of them. As Councilwoman Riley said, the thanks to the departments, I will say that, and all of their work. I know there's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of differences in the new council coming in, but I would say that the lion's share of our city employees and department heads are, obviously everybody has their own personal views, but they do a good job for the city. So I would hope that whatever happens in this transition, they don't get caught up and they're allowed to do their day-to-day jobs without just getting extra paperwork and extra bogged down in normal day-to-day things, especially budget things and things like that. Because their jobs are hard enough as it is, and there'll be some change and transition, as we know when we started. But I just hope that some of the things that are probably bound to change don't affect them unnecessarily as they try to do their jobs. I would say that I was at the tree lighting as well with Councilmember Friedman. It was lovely. The music was fantastic, and as I've said before, there is just a lot of neat events and things going on in this area, in the city, and in the general Broome County area. So just encourage people to take advantage of these holiday things and probably say a few more things as a farewell on the 20th, but happy holidays, everyone. I would just say, just as the weather gets colder and we've had a little snowfall, a little glaze of things, just keep in mind, your neighbors, shovel an extra driveway, shovel an extra sidewalk. Just keep your eyes open around your street. I think whether it's cleaning up or just keeping your eyes open. If you haven't seen your neighbor in a couple days and it's cold, check on them. Fortunately, we haven't had any heavy snowfall and cold, but it's coming. So as we enjoy the holidays, just keep that in mind that we can all help each other. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Strawn. So I remember growing up, my mother made my sister and I read a random word from the dictionary every night. And I can remember the word penultimate. Excellent word. Excellent word. Not the final, but pre. It's a word that should be used more. I agree. I'm gonna save some just kind of general overall comments probably for our last calendar business meeting on the 20th. So I want to thank all of you. And before we adjourn for the evening, for full transparency, I've been made aware earlier today, this afternoon, about one of the requests for legislation that came up after quorum was lost was there was an expedition request that was made toward it, which obviously I pulled back, obviously because we were not in formal session at that point, but it was in relation to City Hall and the state and New York State as it relates to workmen's compensation. So I'm going to momentarily hand the microphone over to Corp Counsel just to kind of walk us through an impact factor about the workman's compensation payment and a deadline that is associated with it. Corp Counsel, please.
As I explained in an email that I believe was supposed to go to all of you, and hopefully all of you received it, there was RL 23-246. It was asking for an increase in the budget line for the payment of workers' comp insurance. That was bill that was received after not after Monday's work session, but after the prior work session. The final bill was received from New York State. There's a significant amount of money in the fund to pay that bill, but it's about 69 and change short. It's $9,000 short out of a $10 million budget for that item. It's about $69,000 short. And there was a request to expedite it because the state has set December 15th as the date to have it paid. If it's not paid on that date, there'll be an additional $65,000 of interest due on top of this. And to spare the taxpayers the extra $65,000, I thought it incumbent to bring that book to the body and after there be a special meeting scheduled solely for the purpose of adopting that. That is the only one out of Monday's meeting that needed to be expedited. If we had had the bill from the state before your work session, we would have brought it to it at an earlier time. It didn't come from state of New York until the last minute.
Anything else?
No, that is pretty much it.
Thank you. So I'm going to throw this out to the body, obviously. I want to make sure that, and I think we all want to make sure that taxpayers don't get stuck with a potential additional $65,000 in late fees due to a payment that needs to be made. What was it, by 15 December?
December 15th.
Thank you.
If it was after the 15th, like the 18th or 20th, I would say just, we could do it at the work session on the 18th, but that doesn't work the way the deadlines are.
Any discussion? Councilwoman Riley, sorry.
So to be clear, you're solely asking for a meeting to discuss and review this one piece of legislation. And that's what we will ultimately be voting on?
Yeah, it's just a special meeting.
Just one.
Well, it needs to be signed out. I'd ask that it be signed out tonight, that people put their names on it, and that it be a sole for purposes of adopting that one piece of legislation, 23-246.
And we can sign it out during a business meeting?
You
If
can
we've
sign
not
out
discussed it in a work session?
It was discussed in a work session.
No, it was not. That was an unofficial, that shouldn't have occurred because there was no quorum. That was a town hall meeting.
It wasn't, all work sessions are essentially town halls. They require public notice because there is a quorum present. But they're informational for counselors such as yourself to gather information to
But in
inform.
order to enact or conduct business, you would have to have a quorum, correct?
But there was no business conducted.
What you're asking now, though.
So
That's why that is a special meeting and it will require public.
let me differentiate here. I am not asking, I will put this on the record. I am not asking for anyone to sign anything out in relation to this during this meeting. 100% agree. That being said, say, for example, you weren't here at a meeting because you weren't feeling well, you had a cold or the flu, and it was a work session. Sponsoring any piece of legislation outside of the meeting is no different than the clerk's office contacting you the next day saying, Councilwoman or Councilman Y, whoever you are, would you like to sponsor these pieces of legislation? So, for example, as we all know, you can author a piece of legislation and not bring it to a work session and garner sponsors for it. So looking for sponsors, yes. Not looking for sponsors before this meeting is adjourned. Yes. So it's a technical difference, but it's a big one. So yes.
That's what I was trying.
Sorry. So I'm soliciting feedback on regarding how we want to move forward here. Councilwoman Freeman.
So I will just say I am only available tomorrow.
I
Unfortunately.
don't think, and I don't mean to be rude, but I don't think tomorrow will work because we have to give 24 hours notice
Right.
before we can vote on it. So
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. I am only available tomorrow and then I'm going out of town.
Councilman Scanlon.
Yeah, I'd like to put my name on that legislation tonight, please, through the clerk's office.
just do it after the meeting.
Yep.
After the,
Yep,
no problem.
thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Brian, I'm going to be very honest with you. My schedule for the next week and a half, I'm full.
All of our schedules are crazy.
Yeah, like I'm beyond.
I,
Councilman Scanlon,
again, what's the alternative? We're gonna pay the fine? Is that the alternative we're talking here?
that is the only alternative.
Well, I can't imagine anybody sitting on this board would not sign this out tonight. Because to stick to taxpayers, and let's go back a minute. This just came in, right? This just came in
Yes.
Yes.
like a couple days ago?
It came in probably in the last week and a half. Yes.
Okay.
So
Maybe
the
2 weeks.
problem,
That- I,
It is the final comp,
it's the final outpay of the year.
the final outpay of the
Yeah.
year. I believe that we selected a date being December 5th to pay it, 15th to pay it by, probably to get a better rate. It came in and it was slightly, it was slightly higher than what we anticipated.
Yeah.
I'm
Councilman
not
Scanlon.
sure what discussion we could possibly have on this. I mean. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I'm going back to, I'm not sure what kind of conversation we'd have about this. It's either
Well,
we pay the fine or we don't pay the fine.
I mean,
That's just-
truthfully,
that's just- it's
truthfully,
cut
at the
right
end of the
there.
day, that is the binary
So,
choice before
again, I'll
us.
put my
Yeah.
name on this legislation tonight and I would hope everybody else would too, but I'm certainly can't tell you which way. to go.
Well, but you see, but Councilman,
No, I understand it. I get
yeah,
it. I get
that's
it. I get it.
technically, that's not the problem. It's not about garnering sponsorships after the meeting's
I get it.
over.
Yeah.
It's with
Yep.
respect to setting a meeting prior to the 15th for the purpose of voting on the legislation. That's Councilman Burns, did you? Oh, I saw you sit up. I didn't know if you, my
I
apologies.
do have something to say, but
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
please.
I was just gonna, I'm available. Almost. Yeah. I can work with it. I'm not going away. You tell me when to be there.
Yeah. So if this is something that's gonna go later into evening, because I'm looking at my calendar. This week. The clerk's office put a lot of work into this agenda. I've just got to put that on the record. Um,
Mr. President.
Councilman Scott.
So, I'm with Mr. Burns here. Councilman Burns, I can be available anytime. I mean, Phil mentioned 8 o'clock meeting. There should be 4 of us to get together, come up with a time. We get together, whether it's 8 o'clock, noon, or 5 o'clock for the next 10 days, right? Within the next week. So there's got to be a time 4 of us to get together and do this.
All right, I'm going to be honest. Just at the expense of maintaining some professionalism with respect to how I feel. We're taking this conversation offline. I'm done with this. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. We are adjourned.
Thank you.